Hey, Foot Clan. Welcome to our Saturday edition. It is July. The fantasy football season is nearly upon us, or so we like to believe. And we are here once again, our third episode of the week. Very excited. Thanks for supporting the podcast. Want to tell you about a giveaway we're doing. We're giving away some free stuff, a T.Y. Hilton jersey, autographed, an autographed Tyreek Hill jersey, an autographed Tevin Coleman jersey, your very own Jay Grizz, and a DFS pass. It is free to enter. There are a number of different ways you can enter, and it is at footclangiveaway.com. That's footclangiveaway.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Playdraft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome into the show. It is Saturday, July 8th.
Everyone is saying that this is going to be the best Saturday podcast ever recorded in 2017
Yes,
so far.
Everyone is saying that very long sentence.
All of the people.
I am Andy Holloway, joined by our grammatical entrepreneur, Jason Moore, and Jay Grizz is here as well. Mike will return on Tuesday of next week. Brooks is manning the ship. Any asteroids in sight, Brooks? Do you see anything dangerous?
We're clear.
We're clear.
Great
okay.
show.
Good. Let's start with a quick question on today's episode of the podcast. This one comes in off of Twitter, at Sir Lancelot, also named as Austin Allen. What round one ADP player has the biggest chance of being a bust in 2017? So this is a player currently being drafted in the first round. So who has the highest odds of being a bust? Because statistically, someone's going to bust from this group.
Several
players.
people in the first round will bust. It happens every single year. So this is a great question that a lot of times
gun to your head, who do you have to pick?
Well, let me just say this. If you have your way, Andy Holloway, then I would be able, by the end of this fantasy season, to say Adrian Peterson will be the bust because you'll have him all the way up there in the first round.
I'm not going to do that.
The 101.
I will not.
But no, in the first round, the guy that I would say has the highest potential to bust, for me, I had to pick a running back.
Okay.
Because just statistically speaking, in the first round, usually running backs bust more than the wide receivers.
They call that Eddie Lacying.
Yes, they do. And so I went with Melvin Gordon, a guy I like, a guy I've got, high.
Love him.
Look, last year, despite, only playing in 13 games, he finished as the running back 7. So obviously he can get it done. That's great. However, here are a few reasons why I think he has legitimate bust potential. Okay, so first of all, his rookie year, comes out as a highly touted recruit from college and completely disappoints because he gets exactly 0 touchdowns through the entire year. Now, that number seemed a little low for the volume he got, but now last year he went from 0 to 12 touchdowns. In not just 12 touchdowns in 13 games. That was a crazy pendulum swing, and I expect that genuinely to be somewhere more realistic, somewhere in the middle there, closer to 7, 8, 9 touchdowns. Also, you have his efficiency, right? I mean, his rookie year, he was terrible, 3.5 yards a carry. Well, he upped it last year all the way to almost 4 yards a carry, which is not a good number. Then you have the fact that last year it was this perfect storm. You had Danny Woodhead injured. You had Brandon Oliver gone. Well, B.O. is back.
B.O. is a great name for Brandon Oliver.
Right? Well, especially if he does what Phillip Rivers thinks he can do, because he's going to come across as body odor to all the Melvin Gordon owners. This is a quote from Phillip Rivers. He says, "It's been great having him back," referring to B.O., Brandon Oliver. "Gosh, we really had such high expectations for him going into last year. He looks good. He looks explosive. I know it's early, but I think he is a really great compliment to Melvin. Their styles are different but similar. We have 2 backs who can run all the same plays." So you add Brandon Oliver in, you get the crazy touchdown numbers to just a normal amount. You still have the inefficient running possibility, and he's being drafted in the first round. So he is my highest likelihood of busting in the first round running backs, even though I'm not calling for a bust. I like him.
You like him?
He's a workhorse. He proved he can do it in the running game, in the passing game.
I'm willing to excuse pendulum swings when you are breaking into the league.
Sure,
I would expect
absolutely.
pendulum swings.
Yeah, I mean, LaShawn McCoy didn't do much his rookie year, broke into the league his sophomore year, never looked back.
I heard this. I don't remember what show I was listening to, some fantasy show on SiriusXM the other day, and they were kind of making the argument that Melvin, Gordon, and Gurley are kind of the inverse, right? Like Gordon had that first year. They both had the pedigree. They both came out in the same draft class. Kind of, they were making the point that, okay, the pendulum's swung too far on Gurley. If he's this generational player, and when he was coming out, everybody said, this is the next Adrian Peterson, but they meant it. Like it was a justifiable comparison, whereas rarely that is the case because of Gurley and how he looked and how he performed and how explosive he was in his rookie year, just how crazy it would be then to swing it all the way to the other direction and say, well, he's done. I don't want him in the second round. I don't want him in the third round. But Gordon, I understand the argument, certainly with the inefficiencies. For me, when I look at round one, it came down to LaShawn McCoy or Mike Evans. If I had to, again, gun to your head, have to pick a first-round bust, I went with Mike Evans. Evans had one top 10 performance. Okay, this is the guy who's been the number one wide receiver. One top 10 performance over the last 8 weeks of last year. Part of that fantasy finish that he had was on the heels of a dominant first half that was very volume dependent. The only target in town, ended the year with 173 targets. I think it's an impossibility for that number to repeat. I think you're going to lose 20 to 25, 30 targets off of that number this year with Chris Godwin, Deshaun Jackson, the return of the running game maybe with Doug Martin.
O.J. Howard.
O.J. Howard has been added there. And I just, as much as I like Winston, he is an erratic quarterback who makes mistakes, throws interceptions. Will he bust Mike Evans? Probably not. But if you're making me pick somebody from the top 10 ADP, I'm going to go with Evans because I think the expectations are so incredibly high for him that disappointment or bust is a possibility for Mike Evans.
That's how I've felt about Mike Evans this entire offseason. But we do need to be careful there because through those last 8 weeks he did not have those great first, second wide receiver finishes like we saw through the first half of the year. But over the last 8 weeks and half-point scoring, he was still the wide receiver 9 during that stretch. So it wasn't like he was pooping his big boy pants on your team.
And he wouldn't have been able to finish where he finished if he was completely laying an egg. All right, we told you about FootClanGiveaway.com. Now we want to ask you to head over to FootClanVote.com.
FootClan assemble!
The 2017 Podcast Awards are accepting nominations this month. You have to vote. You have to nominate one time.
Only
and
one
time only. And we are listed under the People's Choice as well as the Sports and Recreation categories for the Podcast Awards. So if you want to support us over there, it takes about, 40 seconds to go over there.
You just got to make sure you register and then click the confirmation in your email.
Yeah, and then you're done. Done deal.
So easy.
Over. And we know the guy who runs it over there. They don't do anything with your information. It's very secure. So check that out. If you want to follow us on Twitter, our handle is @the_FF_ballers, and the website's thefantasyfootballers.com. All right. Before we get into answering listener questions, off-season questions, keepers, trades, all that sort of fun stuff, we do want to jump into our Review-a-saurus because we like to read reviews from the listeners from time to time. Thanks for reviewing us on iTunes. So Jason's going to do it in a very special way.
Review-a-saurus Rex.
This one comes in from PMB000. He says, must listen, 5 stars. After playing fantasy football with no championships for 10 years, I started listening to the Footballers 2 years ago and immediately won my first championship in a very competitive 20-team league.
That's a humongous league.
That is a very competitive league. Fun and easy to listen to. This podcast is the difference between barely making the playoffs and winning the hashtag FootClan title. Well, PMB 000. Thanks for the review.
Very nice.
Congrats on your championship. You did that.
I would feel a wonderful sense of accomplishment winning a 20-man league.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
And then I would remind everybody of my accomplishment all off season long.
Banners made, T-shirts, trophies.
All right, let's go ahead and do it. Jason, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
You've got the mailbag drop today. Nope, Jay Grizz took care of it earlier this week. Mike isn't back till Tuesday.
Before you hit that drop, I just want to apologize to the people for what's going to happen.
Yeah, I would apologize for sure. Here we go.
Mailbag.
Yeah.
Okay, you went a different direction.
Yeah, I figure I can't do the Mike Primal scream, so I just gotta go with it.
Oh,
be me.
I did say before the show, do whatever you want, and you did. You did. So, all right, if you have a question for the show, head to the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. Click the Submit a Question button, or, as you will see in a moment, you can leave us a voicemail question at 302-464-TFFB. And myself, Jason, and Mike would be happy to answer it, help you out on the show. All right, we are going to kick it off with a voicemail question. I'm excited. I'm ready. Let's answer some of these.
What's going on, footballers? This is Tyler from Massachusetts. Had a quick question for you. I'm expecting to be in a couple 10 to 12-man team leagues, and I want to really adopt this streaming quarterback strategy, and I want to know, who do you guys think this year will be the most dependent on as far as streaming quarterback? Guys that probably won't be drafted, but we'll be looking to a lot in a pinch. Thanks for everything, guys. Love the show.
All right, great question. I mean, I love the strategy. I love diving in and heading to the late-round quarterback avenue. I'm in the middle of writing an article about late-round quarterback strategy, and I think it's just one of those ways that you can maximize value in your league. So who do you think the most relied upon streaming quarterbacks will be? When I look at the board and I'm seeing the 15th, 16th, 17th range quarterbacks, I'm seeing names that I love the idea of streaming. Matthew Stafford, okay, 15th quarterback off the board. Eli, Andy Dalton, Tyrod Taylor. Those four, you can go up to 14. You go Phillip Rivers. So Rivers, Stafford, Manning, Dalton, Taylor, those would be my picks.
Yeah, I mean, you want to draft a guy that you can hope lasts the whole season as a starter. But when you're streaming, if you talk about the guys that aren't drafted, because all those guys will be drafted in almost every league, the truth is when it comes to streaming, there is no one guy you're going to use all the time. Every single year, there are more than 40 quarterback ones. And if you think about the fact that there's only 32 teams, that's crazy.
I don't think Taylor's going to be drafted. Palmer's not going to be drafted in a lot of leagues.
Palmer might not be.
Bortles won't be drafted in a lot of leagues.
Bortles won't be. Those are great.
Those
Ryan
are
Tannehill.
Exactly.
I think Sam Bradford. You're going to have Josh McCown as a streaming starter who finishes the week as a number 2 option. I mean, that's the whole point, is that the guys on the waivers, when they've got the right matchup, they're going to outscore your Drew Brees in a wrong matchup.
Yeah, exactly. So those are names that I would pay attention to. But, again, you're going to need to be flexible as opposed to say, hey, these guys are going to be the ones that work out. Because this, Jason brought up Josh McCown. It's going to be dependent on performance, and it's going to be dependent on really how these defenses look 6 weeks into the year, and then all of a sudden you're going, wow, I can start almost any quarterback against X and X defense.
Right.
All right, half-point question from Calum in Sydney, Australia says, hey, guys. Oh, Australia.
Bonjour.
Yeah, way out there in Bonjour land. Looking at proposing half-point per reception for wide receivers and full point for all other positions for my 12-team redraft league. Hoping to get your thoughts. What do you think, Jason?
When it comes to balancing a league, I get the argument with that, and it really depends on how you want to play. I would not prefer this. I would prefer to have half point across all positions or full point across all positions or standard. And if I'm being honest as to the reason why, it's because when you get advice, when you are listening to this show or other shows, when you make rankings, when you find rankings, when you look at average draft positions, they're all going to not assume your unique standard scoring. So there's two different types of players here, right? One is the guy that or gal that's going to make their own rankings, put in their own scoring system, and they're going to take advantage of the fact that they realize Theo Riddick, when he gets a full point per reception, is going to outscore your good wide receivers that are only getting a half point per reception, and they'll draft him higher. But if you're not willing to put in all of that work, where you're putting in your scoring system and in specific to your rankings. I guess you could download the UDK and change the rankings there. I like, fantasy football's fun. And I like when I can hear advice or hear arguments for or against a guy based on kind of what I'm playing in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think generally if you have a league with a very unique or complex scoring system, it really works only in leagues where you can almost be your own media source for your league, where everybody is so driven and committed, almost recording their own podcast for their league. That's about the best environment. Otherwise, Jason makes a good point. I mean, you want to be able to compare advice that you see elsewhere, and that's one of the best reasons to stay in a more standard format. Let's jump into another voicemail question.
Gentlemen, the fantasy gods have smiled upon us. After week 4, there is only 1 week in which both Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger are on the road. Huzzah! How far would both Brees and Roethlisberger have to fall for you to consider a situation in which you would draft them both? I pray for nothing but good tidings upon the Holloway, Moore, and Wright homes. Good day to you all.
Wow.
Well, I loved that.
That was great.
That was fantastic.
And how about that news after week 4?
It feels so important when someone speaks to me like I'm a king or something.
Right. A king or a pirate or something.
Right. No, that was more of a formal,
yeah,
like
I guess
a Knights
right.
of the Round Table.
I'll be honest. Pirate makes no sense there.
No, it didn't. No.
Fair enough. Well, so to answer the question, look, if you have Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger on your roster come, week 5, and you only have one, if they're swapping home road games, you're going to do very well at the quarterback position.
Would you spend a 4th and a 7th round pick on 2 quarterbacks?
I would never, ever, 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 unless it's a 2-quarterback league, spend a 4th and a 7th on 2 quarterbacks. You're giving up too much. So here's what
else?
do.
You'd
I've
be
got the advice.
stuck too. If you did that, you'd be like, I'm locked into this strategy no matter what.
I have your solution.
Oh,
gentleman caller.
No, no pirates, no gentleman callers.
I liked that one.
Just
all right, here's the solution: Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger. If you look at their
to watch Princess Bride a little bit more.
If you look at the first 4 weeks, you'll notice that one of the home games for Drew Brees, that locked and loaded, you want Drew Brees at home, is actually the Patriots, and that is that's a very difficult defense to play against a lot of times. He starts on the road at the Vikings and then at the Panthers. So Drew Brees does not get off to a nice start, and he's going to be the more expensive of the two. So what I would do is I would draft Ben Roethlisberger, who, if you look at his 2 road games in those first 4 weeks are the Browns and the Bears.
Yeah,
so he might just be able to get it done to start the year. And then go trade for Drew Brees when his owner is disappointed.
Well thought out reply, other than all of the
gentleman caller
attempts to connect to the
Mr.
the accent.
Beauregard, I do
no,
declare.
No. Ian in Marblehead, with Deshaun Jackson at quarterback, does it make Will Fuller and C.J. Fiedorowicz more valuable in the later rounds?
That's Deshaun Watson. I think he said Jackson.
Did I say Jackson? Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Well, if Deshaun Jackson was at quarterback, then no. And with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, I will say no.
Yeah,
As of today, I mean, it's Tom Savage today, and it will be Watson by week 6 through 10, and even that.
But if
they're going to run a conservative offense, they're going to put him in a position not to – I mean, when's the last time a rookie quarterback had the opportunity to produce massive fantasy numbers coming in midway through the year that didn't involve him running? I mean, even Carson Wentz, who had one of the better rookie years in a while, I think 14 touchdowns, something ridiculous.
Right. If Watson is the starter week 1, I don't bump up Will Fuller or Fiedorowicz. If you look at what Brock Osweiler was good at, and there wasn't much.
It was wallpapering.
It was wallpapering.
Uh-huh.
Targeting tight ends, which all the DeAndre Hopkins owners, hated because, man, C.J. Fiedorowicz and Ryan Griffin,
yes,
they got plenty of targets.
And Griffin's back, by the way.
Right. And then he does have a strong arm. Right, Brock Osweiler can throw a good deep ball. That's what helped Will Fuller those first few weeks. What's crazy is if we remember the first 4 weeks of last year, Will Fuller was the wide receiver 13. Everyone was like, oh, this guy's the future. From weeks 5 to 17, he was the wide receiver 100.
And even 100.
Cracked
right where you want to be.
Digits. But, no, I don't think Watson's arm strength helps Will Fuller. I don't think his lack of targeting tight ends at the rate that Brock did will benefit either of those gentlemen.
All right, we're going to jump into another voicemail question. Before we do that, I want to thank the sponsor of today's show, Pristine Auction. I was over at pristineauction.com. We have lunch with them today, by the way. Great
Awesome.
Company,
Great
local
guys.
out here. I looked at the homepage of Pristine Auction to see what autographed memorabilia was available. Right on the homepage, a framed Cam Newton jersey, Jerry Rice, Jim Brown, Bo Jackson. There was an autographed Tom Brady jersey with 8 of his teammates for the Super Bowl.
Do you know what they threw up the other day, which is crazy? With no reserve pricing, they threw up a signed, framed Wilt Chamberlain jersey.
Yeah, and this is just the tip of the Pristine Auction iceberg because they have not tens but hundreds of auctions that end every day on autographed memorabilia. There is something for every budget, genuinely. There is something for every team, for every sports fan, for every movie fan, for every entertainment fan. The absolute best authentic gear over at Pristine Auction. So check them out. The address is pristineauction.com, Pristine auction.com.
And also make sure you check out the Ultimate Draft Kit. That is our baby. Take a look at our group child. The Ultimate Draft Kit, we helped a lot of people win fantasy titles last year. That's what we want to do here, and there is a lot in there. There's Matt Harmon's reception perception. There's all of our premium rankings. There's all of our tiers and our tier-based drafting in there. Sleepers, breakouts, busts, all of those
100-plus player profile videos,
Yeah, we did
so whoever you want us to drill down to, you can find them right on there.
Yeah, I heard someone saying when they go to, draft a guy, before they do, they just pop on the video of us just describing them and get that affirmation or warning. And, there's just a lot of good stuff. So check it out, ultimatedraftkit.com.
All right, let's jump back into the mailbag. This one's a voicemail question.
Hey, guys. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Welcome.
So,
Gentleman call.
I've been doing my mock drafts lately, and I've been thinking, what is the lowest running back 2 that I feel comfortable going with into the season? And consistently, the answer is basically like Crowell or somebody on that tier. So basically my question is it wrong to draft running back for the first 3 rounds of the draft? It just feels weird. Thanks.
All right, great question. Is it wrong? No, it's not wrong. However, you don't need to draft 3 to get a running back 2 that you necessarily feel comfortable with. Crowell is a 3rd-round pick. If you ask me that question, the guy that I would be targeting for that running back 2 spot that will give you flexibility to draft other positions if you want to. Couple of guys. Ty Montgomery, I think, is interesting as a running back 2 at the back of the 4th.
Certainly.
Mike Gillislee at the top of the 5th is very interesting to me.
Love that.
And then I really wouldn't mind doing something like Dalvin Cook at the back of the 5th and then pairing him with another rookie later in the draft, maybe even with a guy like C.J. Prosise, who's going in the 11th. If I could pair a rookie with another PPR contributor later, assuming half-point or full-point PPR, that's about where my comfort level would be.
Yeah, get a late Theo Riddick. One of the things you'll notice this year in average draft position is that the top running backs are going as early as they have gone in recent memory. I mean, they are all being drafted very, very high.
It's about time.
Then there's this huge gap where, the later running backs, they're being drafted later than ever. So there is value to be had in those late rounds with running backs. I mean, Rob Kelly is in the 8th round.
Right.
Theo Riddick is in the 10th round. These are guys that will be contributing week in and week out. So I think you have the opportunity where maybe you don't love your RB2, to the moon, but you've got a couple guys on your bench that you're going to be able to figure out that RB2 spot no problem.
I'm going to tell you something, Jason.
I'm going to listen.
I'm going to ruin somebody's ADP over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to ruin it. and his name's Jonathan Stewart. He's a 9th-round draft pick. It's in the middle of the 9th round.
So you're not.
I'm going to ruin it in the sense that it's going up.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to ruin it for me. I'm going to ruin it for everybody who wants to draft him because I'm going to talk about him too much. We have a show coming up next week called Old, Bland, and Undervalued. We're going to talk about some of these forgotten players. Jonathan Stewart is smack dab in the middle of that conversation. 9th-round pick, starting running back for the Carolina Panthers. That is the current state of affairs, but nobody wants to draft him.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about being comfortable. If I could grab Dalvin Cook and Jonathan Stewart and figure out my running back 2, I might end up with an RB2 and a flex out of that situation. So a lot of options, but great question. Appreciate it. James has a question. Which wide receiver on a bad team will have the most fantasy points in 2017? So what wide receiver on a bad team will have the most fantasy points in 2017? It happens every year, obviously. Passing volume. The famous garbage time.
Oh, the garbage man can.
Who's the garbage man?
Well, and then he provided a few. I don't know if he wanted.
Oh, these
out
are
of
these from
4.
him?
Yeah. Those are
so
from
he
him.
he
Yeah.
proposed Cameron Meredith, Quincy Enunwa, Corey Coleman, or Robert Woods.
Which one? I got my pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, and I have them back to back right now. I'm gonna go with Corey Coleman. I saw what Pryor was able to produce as the one. I think Coleman is the one talent-wise. He just has to be healthy. I have him and Woods back-to-back. I'm going to say Coleman right now.
Here's a funny stat that will make sure that you realize that stats can say absolutely anything you want them to. Did you know, Andy, that through the first 8 weeks of the season, we're talking the first half of the season, there were 3 wide receivers tied in 3rd place for fantasy points scored per game. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, and Corey Coleman.
I did know that. You told me yesterday.
Yeah, it's just funny because he only played 2 games. One of those games was a monstrous blowout.
So therefore,
game.
his points per game.
His points per game looked great. But my point in all that jargon.
Does that mean he's your answer?
He is definitely my answer. I think the upside of Corey Coleman with Terrell Pryor leaving, his talent was shown in that week 2, where he can get down for the 31-yard touchdown, no problem.
Right now, he's scaring me because he's starting to feel like Devontae Parker with the injury concerns.
I agree.
Where is he not taking something seriously? And I don't want to disparage Corey Coleman, but when you're injured and you're injured in the different kind of variety of subtle ways with soft tissue issues, you just worry about conditioning. Devontae Parker came out later and said, "Hey, I didn't take this eating and thing seriously my first 2 years. I'm going to do that now."
There's no veteran presence there to teach Corey Coleman when you're on the Browns. And so I've moved Corey Coleman down in my rankings because of exactly what you're talking about.
I don't want him to learn from Kenny Britt.
No.
I saw him on Hard Knocks flipping a golf cart.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a veteran presence.
He is a very large child.
Large child, big boy.
But, yeah, so, I do worry about Corey Coleman. He's got risk, but he has an upside that the other guys, in my opinion, don't have.
Dickerson in Tampa says, Dynasty, 2-quarterback superflex league with full PPR. Should he consider trading Zeke Elliott for Joe Mixon and Allen Robinson? I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either at all.
No.
I'm not tempted by that. Zeke is a true elite known difference maker.
What if it said Joe Mixon and Julio Jones?
Well, then sure.
Yeah, exactly. The problem to me doesn't
really
sit with Mixon's upside. It sits with the other piece that isn't guaranteed. They're both not guaranteed.
Yeah, they're both not guaranteed. But for me, as a general rule, as a strategy in redraft leagues, there are very few true elite stud difference makers. I'm not talking about the guys that are good. I'm talking about basically the top 6 draft picks right now in the draft. You got your Zeke, David Johnson, Lev Bell, and you got Antonio Brown, Julio, and Odell Beckham. If I've got one of those guys, if I trade them, I want another guy like that in that trade.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Not worth it. I mean, we see that in our Dynasty League. It's hard to pry those guys away, and I would need more. I would need a lot more. All right, King. Oh, here's the actual King. King in Houston. How do you guys feel about LeGarrette Blount's production? Do you see him as a high-end number 2? What do you think?
No, I don't see him as a high-end number 2. Could he finish there? Sure. Maybe a low-end number 2 I think is more realistic. Here's what LeGarrette Blount is. LeGarrette Blount was opportunity last year. I mean, he was in our Ultimate Draft Kit last year as, a great sleeper because people were, just hating on LeGarrette Blount. And we're like, he's got this great opportunity right now with the Patriots, and he scored 18 touchdowns.
That's 18 more than you had last year.
Just barely. 18 touchdowns. Here's what's the craziest, though. The guy scored 18 touchdowns last year, and there were 7 times that he was not a top 20 running back. So you had a lot of times where he's not really helping you out, and that was on the Patriots scoring 18 touchdowns. I realize, that Ryan Matthews, he had 8 touchdowns in limited work. They're going to give him the opportunity to score touchdowns. But what does he get, 10? If he gets 10 touchdowns, that would be incredible. That would be great. You're probably going to pay off where you draft him. But even then, the rest of his volume, he's not involved in the passing game hardly at all. He's going to have more duds. You're really reliant on the touchdown with LeGarrette Blount. I like him better in a best ball league where you're just waiting for those games where he scores, and you don't have to worry about the games where he doesn't.
Yeah, and even though he had such an incredible year, the stat you just brought up points out the problem we've had with starting Patriots running backs in general. There is an inconsistency to the game plan, and you don't necessarily get to lock and load a guy, and that question still exists for guys like Mike Gillislee, Rex Burkhead, Dion Lewis, James White's production. I think White's probably the safest.
Let's see where Blount is being drafted. Right now, Blount's
he's being drafted in like the 4th, isn't he?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Too high.
I agree. I was actually thinking, I wanted to pull that up so I could say he's probably being underdrafted still, though, but nope. Sorry. No good news for LeGarrette Blount.
All right, Rick wants to know, what if you're in a 6-point touchdown for quarterback league? Would that change your opinion on waiting on quarterbacks?
Great.
Yeah, great question.
We get this question many times every year. It does not in any way, shape, or form change. In fact, every league we play in is 6 points per quarterback. What actually happens there, the reason we value or devalue the quarterback position is what we referred to earlier in the episode, the streaming options where you just play off of the waiver wire. We will make picks all year long where we just look at guys that aren't owned at every week and say, they're less than 50% owned on ESPN. Start this guy this week. We did that a couple, I think we finished as the quarterback 6 overall if you had played the guys off of
all
waivers.
The streamers, yeah.
But here's what happens in 6 quarterback point per touchdown leagues. You would think that you would end up with, a bigger gap between the better and the worse. But what happens is the worst quarterbacks actually have more finishes inside the top 12. And shout out to J.J. Zacharyson for enlightening me on that one. So, no, it's opposite of what you think.
All right, Dylan in Tennessee wants to know, says that him and his friend have a bet on who would have more yards this year. Hope it's a water bet. What is your opinion? More yards, Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr.?
Michael Thomas or Odell Beckham Jr., more yards.
I'll take Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, I'm going to default to Odell Beckham Jr., and if you want to know exactly, I have Michael Thomas down for 1,200 yards and Odell Beckham Jr. down for 1,485 yards. So even though I have plenty of love.
Beckham was 1,450 in 2015. He was 1,367 last year. That is where he will be. So
yeah, I've got a lot of love for Michael Thomas.
You're asking a lot for Michael Thomas.
You're going to lose that bet.
Yeah. All right. Benjamin off of Twitter says, can you discuss the importance of bench spots in relation to drafting a second quarterback or tight end? Isn't it better to draft a late-round upside running back wide receiver and grab a waiver wire upside, I guess, in those other positions through the first few weeks? Certainly.
Yeah.
If the bench is very deep, then you are afforded more opportunity to pick a quarterback that you believe will bust out and play the rotation, basically stream off of your own bench if you have a super deep, different league. A lot of leagues have 4 or 5 bench spots, maybe one IR spot. And so, yes, it is better to have those more high-value positions that you have to start more of than the 2 positions that you don't start more than one of.
Right. I mean, when it comes to it, you're right. If you've got a deeper league, or let's say your league, always, every single team without question is rostering 2 quarterbacks. Some are rostering 3 quarterbacks. Then then maybe if there's an opportunity late, I might take a second quarterback, or if it's a deeper bench. I will never. I don't think there is really a situation where I will draft 2 tight ends.
There's one situation, and it was popping into my head. The only time I've ever taken another tight end is if it's a tight end starting the year on the injured reserve that I know is going to return.
Like if you've got Gronk.
Like when Gates was suspended last year.
Sure.
And I was willing to hold on to him for 4 weeks or something like that, but almost no situation.
Right. I mean, 2 tight ends, you're completely wasting your bench spot. Great logic from the writer that wrote in.
I want to jump in. I see a lot of people ask, well, what about if I get 2 of the elite tight ends? Doesn't it make sense to always flex one?
If you got 2 of the elite tight ends.
I mean, what, Gronkowski and Reed?
Yeah, so let's say you got Gronk and Reed.
Yeah.
Now you've made a roster composition problem, unless you're in the Scott Fishbowl League where tight ends outscore wide receivers, because what you have done is you have given up 2 of your first 4 or maybe 5 rounds to not running backs and wide receivers.
Yeah, you've drafted your flex above positions that you need to start 2 and 3 of.
Yeah, multiples of. You've hurt your team.
Yeah. If you end up in that situation, organically through trade and things like that, sure, you should flex Jordan Reed because he's going to, be a better performer than a number of wide receiver options. All right, Chris in London, England.
Oh, bonjour.
Hey, guys, great show. I'm in a 2-quarterback, old-school standard scoring league. Your recent 2-quarterback mop, also known as a mock, was very helpful. But in my league, quarterbacks are generally drafted later than normal.
Great.
Is there value in stacking elite quarterbacks early in that situation? I would say the answer is yeah, because what that means, if they're drafted later, is that you're going to get that second quarterback option later than you could normally.
Yeah.
So I would think that it would be a severe advantage if you could stack Rodgers in the second with Luck in the fourth.
Well, and that's what we need to be clear on, because if that just means you're getting good value on them, then yes. If it means I'm going to just spend my first 2 picks on those 2 guys, then you're not playing to the fact that your league drafts quarterbacks late. Use that, and if you're drafting based on tiers, then that'll take care of it. It doesn't matter what round; it just matters how many guys are left in each tier, and you'll do fine.
All right, we're going to close on this question from Joe off of Twitter. Interesting one. What is the best time to sell high on Antonio Brown, given Big Ben's potential retirement? He is coming from a dynasty PPR perspective. I think it's a great question. I'm not sure that I know the right answer for you, but I'm willing to talk about it, Jason.
Yeah, well, I brought this up yesterday on the Footcast show over at Join the Foot, that I am an Antonio Brown dynasty owner.
Yes, you are. You have this decision.
Fully convinced that Big Ben will be playing his last year this year.
Yeah.
And while Antonio Brown is not going to die, he's going to be, he's going to play.
Everybody dies, Jason.
And I guess I was wrong.
Not everybody
Antonio
truly
Brown will
lives.
Die. Oh, good movie. No, but the point is he'll still be a relevant, productive wide receiver for whatever quarterback comes in, but he won't be the number 1 Antonio Brown. We saw this with Larry Fitzgerald when he lost, captain.
Yeah, nobody doubts Larry Fitzgerald's a Hall of Famer.
Right.
So you did see a Hall of Famer have their production slashed.
Right, until they got Carson Palmer back. So,
I do trust Pittsburgh to find themselves a quarterback more than another franchise.
Yeah, they've been trying. I feel like they've failed quite a bit, but you could be right. I don't know when that time is. You got to look at your league's trade deadlines if you have one and decide. But I will say this. You got to get a premium because he's still Antonio Brown. He's the best in the business. And if you can get a premium for what he is, halfway through the season, then pull the trigger. If you can't keep him, you're not going to be sad that you have him.
That's a good answer.
All right.
Well done. Jay Grizz, anything to add to this Saturday episode? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You want to get back to it. I got you. All right, that is it. Brooks, you doing well? You ready to sign off?
Yeah.
All right, we're done here. Tuesday, Mike will be back. Jay Grizz, sorry, you're on the sidelines. Great shows ahead next week. Make sure you check out the various URLs we gave you earlier, footclanvote.com and footclangiveaway.com. Check those out.
And jointhefoot.com.
Yeah,
and thefantasyfootballers.com.
Just go
and
to
youtube.com/thefantasyfootballers.
We are trying to buy up the internet.
We just
one domain at a time.
Well, the one we don't have, go to playdraft.com/ballers.
Oh.
Our studio sponsor, if you haven't been playing over there.
I hope somebody has like 8 to 10 windows open right now and they've been typing every URL.
Yeah, they're smart. You're doing it right.
But check out playdraft.com/ballers. Play some best ball leagues with us. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.